Hello viewer, welcome to History and Government Form 3 lesson. This is lesson 6 with your teacher, Mr. John Gatumu. We have been dealing with the chapter 1, that is the Europeans' invasion of Africa and the process of colonization. And in our previous lesson, we are looking at the impact of partitioning of Africa. And the impact of partitioning of Africa, we said that Africa, following the Berlin Conference, Africa was divided. And therefore, it was divided amicably amongst all the participants of this region, that is the 15 partners who came, that is the European nation who came in this conference. And therefore, each European's power, they came and took their own colonies in Africa. So therefore, after they took their own colonies, I gave you some assignment on this. I gave you this assignment that you will try, and this is you attempt the following question. This question was, describe the main impact of partitioning. The main impact of partitioning of Africa, we said, it led to establishment of new states, or rather new colonies. The new colonies were established in Africa, or rather the countries were established in Africa. Number 2, it led to establishment of European administrative system. The European administrative system, such as direct rule, indirect rule, the assimilation used by the French and also association, they were all the administrative rules or system that was used in this region. There was also establishment of artificial boundaries without even consulting of African rulers or local rulers and also the community. So in today's lesson, we shall continue with the same chapter, but the subtopic that we're going to deal with, this is the African reaction to the European colonization. The African reaction to the European colonization, but we shall deal with resistance. We shall deal with the resistance, and this one we shall look at the Maji Maji resistance or Maji Maji rebellion in this class. So African reaction to the European colonization, now that Africa has been divided and Europeans' power are coming to Africa so that they can take their own colonies. So when they came to the African response took only 2 forms. The reaction for the Africans was of 2 forms, that is either resistance, and resistance means going against the Europeans. It means going against the Europeans. To resist is to go against. So going against the Europeans. This was either by active resistance. An active resistance here is whereby African used armed struggle against the colonizer. So all the Europeans, upon their interest in colonization of African state, the Africans community who are existing in that region, they went against them, against the colonizers, and this is by use of their existing armed struggle, or rather to resist them. This was known as the active resistance, use of armed struggle against the colonizer. Resistance also took the form of passive resistance, and this passive resistance, this is whereby Africans refused to collaborate or to cooperate with the colonizer. They refused to cooperate with the colonizers. A good example, they refused to pay tax. They refused to offer free labor. This was actually the resistance. Apart from resistance, we have another response, because we say there are 2. This is the collaboration. Collaboration, this is how Africans cooperated. This is how the Africans collaborated with the Europeans. This is how the African cooperated with the Europeans colonizers. It's known as collaboration. As the name suggests, collaborate means to cooperate, where resistance means not to cooperate, or rather going against, that is either by active, using the armed struggle, or passive, where they refused to cooperate with their ideas. For example, refuse to pay tax. So, on this particular lesson today, we shall deal with the first response, and this is the resistance. We want to deal with only resistance, so that in the next lesson we shall continue. So, on the resistance, we say this was the war, or rather going against. And going against, this was the war against the European by the African to defend their age-old and ancient political, social, and economic institutions. So in Africa, they had initially established their own political, social, and economic institutions, and therefore they were much ready to defend, or rather to defend this one, because the Europeans came and made all these institutions to collapse, and therefore they declared war against the colonizers. So this was known as basically the resistance. So their leaders, they were led by their leaders, and their leaders did not want to lose their power, wealth, and sources of prestige. Remember, Africa, they had the local African leaders, example, the chiefs, and these chiefs, they did not want to lose easily their power, their wealth, and also their source of prestige, because the post of the chief, according to the Africa, was one of the prestigious position or prestigious post in that matter, and therefore the leaders did not want to lose. Therefore, they declared an active resistance against the colonizers. So others on resisting, others they were militarily prepared for the Europeans. They were actually prepared for the Europeans. A good example, we have the Madinka, we have the Nandi, we have the Dembele, and Ethiopia. Remember, a good example, Ethiopia, under the Menelik II, we said that they gave an active resistance to the Italians, and therefore the Italians did not colonize the Ethiopia as they were expecting, and therefore you see Ethiopia was not colonized. Look at the Madinka. Madinka also gave a very strong resistance. Nandi, they gave 7 years resistance against the invasion of the British. The Dembele, again, they also gave a very strong resistance. So this is the military use of military to fight against the Europeans. Some resistors, when you say resistors, they are those who were resisting. Some resistors or resisting communities, they were centralized states, and therefore enjoying an immense unity, making it easy to mobilize people for the war. So some of the community who are centralized, when you say centralized, this is where they have their own leaders, or rather the powers coming from one particular person distributed to the other organs, and therefore on the centralized community, they gave an active resistance, or rather the military resistance, because they were much united. They were united under their leader. And a good example, we have the Madinka, Nandi, the Bele, and also Ethiopia under the Menelik too. So, because of this immense unity, they were united, and therefore to mobilize people as one, it was very easy to give an active resistance. So, an active resistance was most favorable in the centralized community, whereas the collaboration was for the decentralized community. We look at a good example of the centralized community who are able, or they are enjoying an immense unity. We have a good example in Tanganyika resistance. And this resistance is known as the Maji Maji rebellion. The Maji Maji rebellion started in the year 1905 to the year 1907. This was the 2 years of an active resistance. And this rebellion or uprising, this uprising was in Tanganyika. Tanganyika is the modern Tanzania, and it was the most significant African challenge to the German colonial rule in its African colonies. And therefore, the Africans in Tanganyika, they were they gave an active resistance to the German colonial rule in their colonies. So the uprising lasted 2 years, as we have said, and over 10,000 square miles. So the time, or rather these communities, they covered a mile of 10,000 square miles. That is when they gave an active resistance towards the German colonizers. The Tanzania or the Tanganyika, it had acquired largely, or it had been acquired largely by Dr. Karl Peter, and Karl Peter was one of the agents in the German company, imperial company, who signed treaties with the chiefs of Sangara. I want to show you how the Germans took over the Tanganyika. So Tanganyika, it had been acquired largely by the Karl Peter, and Karl Peter acquired this region. They acquired the region by signing the treaties, and these treaties were the treaties with the chief of Usangara. Usangara was a community in Tanganyika. Ungura was another community who signed a treaty with Karl Peter. Uzingua, another community, and Ukami was in 1885. So by this time, 1885, so Karl Peter, being an agent of the German imperial companies in East Africa, that is Tanganyika, had largely acquired this region by signing the treaties with the chief. So rebellion involved the communities in Tanganyika, such as the Zaramo, Matumbi, Bena, Gindo, Pongoro, Bunga, Ngoni, Bunguru, Wamwera, and the Ndule. These were the communities who were heavily involved in the rebellion, or rather uprising against the colonizer German, and they gave an active resistance. They were able to fight them at a distance of 10,000 square miles. They were able to give a very strong resistance because these people were much united, because the state was centrally, it was a central state. So this rebellion took 2 years. What were the causes? Have you ever asked yourself, what were the causes for this rebellion? Remember, the rebellion is known as the Maji Maji rebellion. It is known as the Maji Maji rebellion because this occurred in the southern eastern Tanganyika, and therefore this region, there was some people, or rather, this community that we have mentioned. A territory was under the German colonial rule, that is under the Dr. Karl Peter, and the coastal and this part, some of the communities in other parts of Tanganyika, they had also rebelled. A good example, we have the Zaramo. They had already rebelled against them. And therefore, the coastal Arabs, they rose against the German rule, and therefore in 1888 and 1989, that is the time they actually fought against them. So they were led by Abushiri and Hehe under the leadership of Mkwawa, who rose in 1891. So the Chaga and the Nyamwezi, they also rebelled. So this rebellion were, however, crushed by the German, who were then established a firm control over these people who were defeated. So the Maji Maji rebellion was given this name because of the religion. So we have a religion that was led by the Kinjeketile Ngwale. Kinjeketile Ngwale, this was a religious specialist, and the religious specialist united all the community, and he told this community that he has the water, and this water was a magic water, and the magic water was actually could not allow the Germans' bullet to penetrate in their body. So therefore, with this belief, religious belief, the community accepted to give a very fiercest rebellion against the Germans. And remember, the Germans, they had some sophisticated weapons, and therefore they could kill them, a number of them, unlike the Tanganyika community, who were not that prepared because they did not have this strong weapon. So therefore, with the courage from this magic water, they were able to go to face the Germans on a front war, and therefore they could fight against them. So therefore, this one was given the name Maji Maji. Maji Maji is a Swahili term that means water, water. So therefore, this is a water that was a magic, and therefore it made them to go and fight. So we see the causes of Maji Maji rebellion, what made this to occur. The causes of Maji Maji rebellion is one, it occurred because of the oppression of Africans. So the Germans who had colonized Tanganyika, they imposed a violent regime. That is, they were so cruel, they were so brutal, they were so harsh and ruthless rulers. They ruled them. Their rule was so brutal, and therefore the Africans, Tanganyika community, they could not tolerate all this oppression. Therefore, they gave an uprising or a rebellion. 2, in 1905, there was a drought that threatened the region, making Africans incur heavy losses on the crops that was not even edible. So this drought threatened the region, and therefore the Africans, they incurred a heavy loss on the crops that was not edible. So remember, the Germans, with their oppressive rule, they had forced the Tanganyika community to grow the cotton, and therefore the cotton was not edible. Therefore, the Africans, because they did not have any other option apart from subjecting to this oppression rule, they engaged in the plantation of the cotton, which was not even edible, and therefore a drought came in 1905, and it threatened this region. So therefore, the Africans saw that this is just a loss because this crop was not even edible, and therefore they started their rebellion on 1905 to 1907. Another cause of the Maji Maji rebellion, it is the high introduction of high taxation by the German East African Company. Remember, German East Africa Company, abbreviated as GEAC, that was under the Dr. Karl Peter, had imposed or raised a revenue, wanted to raise a revenue for the administration. And therefore, they imposed high taxation. There was high taxation such as the hard tax, and therefore all this tax was needed for administration of this company. So therefore, this high taxation prompted Africans to engage in the rebellion, the Maji Maji rebellion. Another one was the forced labor. The forced labor. Africans were required to grow cotton and build roads for their European occupiers. The Europeans who had occupied all this region, they had subjected Africans to a forced labor, working without no pay. And therefore, the Africans, they were forced to grow the cotton, which was not even edible. They were forced to build roads, and therefore they rebelled against this act. This was an oppressive rule by the German. Another causes of this war was the Christian missionaries. The Christian missionaries, that is the German Christian missionaries, they discredited the traditional belief and practices. So they condemned the sacred places as places of witchcraft. So when the missionaries came all the way from Germany, they actually was against the culture of the African or the Tanganyika community. And they strongly condemned some places of worship, that is the sacred places, and they regarded this place as the witchcraft. And therefore, the Africans saw this as disrespectful, and therefore they had to wage war against the German because the Christian discredited their culture. Next, another cause of Maji Maji rebellion. The land is because of the land alienation. There was a massive loss of African land to German. Remember when German took over Tanganyika, they annexed all the African lands, and therefore Africans were pushed. The Tanganyika community were pushed in the reserves, and in these reserves they were overcrowded, and therefore they found themselves without any land. So the land alienation was one of the factor that actually skyrocketed their interest to go and fight against the German because they took their land. Another causes of the Maji Maji rebellion was it occurred because of the cotton growing scheme. The cotton growing scheme. So Africans were forced to grow cotton in the communal cotton growing scheme, where they got little payment. So the Colonel Peter, they had established a scheme, that is a scheme of growing the cotton, and therefore the laborers was the Africans who are forced to go and work to grow the cotton, and only what they could get as the benefit was just a little pay, or rather the payment was just little. So Africans considered this to be oppressive, and therefore, because this grown cotton was not even edible, they had to protest, and they started protesting. They started protesting against this. Another and the main main causes of this Maji Maji rebellion was the role that was played by the religious specialists, and this was known as the Kinjeketile Ngwale. Kinjeketile Ngwale, this being a religious specialist, he instilled some confidence in the Africans and united them. He instilled them, he gave them confidence to unite them and rise up against the German. And he gave the magic water. This magic water was to instill the confidence that the German bullet will not get them wherever they are. And therefore, they were encouraged and they faced the Germans. So therefore, this water did not work. You will see the consequences of this. It did not work, and a number of this community were killed because this water was not working. We finish our lesson by looking at the consequences of Maji Maji uprising. What were the results of Maji Maji uprising? The consequences of Maji Maji uprising was one, it led to the massive loss of lives, and this is about the dead tolls went to about 75,000 to 100,000 men. They died. All these people died. Remember, the water, Maji Maji water, gave them a false confidence, and therefore they were killed by the Germans' sophisticated weapons. Two, there was a massive destruction of properties, as villages and crops were burned when the Germans applied the scorched earth policy. So the Germans applied the scorched earth policy, and the scorched earth policy, this is whereby when they go to the land, when they go to the street, they destroy, they burn and loot everything. And therefore, by burning and looting everything, the crops, the villages, it made Africans to suffer. So this one led to the destruction of properties. There was a massive destruction of properties because of the scorched earth policy that was used by the Germans in the war. 3, there was a severe famine. And as farms and granaries were destroyed, disrupted the economic activities such as agriculture and trade. So the famine came, and because the farms and the granaries were destroyed during the scorched earth policy, so these one disrupted the economic activities such as the agriculture and trade. 4, it led to the displacement of people. Thousands of families were displaced during the war. So a lot of them, they found themselves without their land, without their houses, because of this war, displacement. A lot of people were displaced. Other consequences, there was a loss of leadership in African communities. Most of African communities or African leaders, loss of leadership in African communities, most leaders were captured. They were also hanged or others imprisoned. A total of 47 Goni chiefs. When you say Goni chief, these are the chiefs under the Goni community. And the 47 of these chiefs, for example, they were killed, they were hanged. So this was the loss, a massive loss of leadership in African community. Next, another impact, it led to the uprising also undermined the African confidence. So African had confidence in their traditional religion, and therefore the magic water, the Maji Maji, failed to protect them against the Germans' bullet. So when they were killed, we have said 75,000 to 100,000 men were killed. They failed to acknowledge their own religion, and therefore this one undermined the African confidence in their own traditional religion. This one led, the Maji Maji rebellion led to the foundation of Tanganyika nationalism, and the Maji Maji rebellion became an inspiration for 20th century freedom fighters who called for similar inter-ethnic unity as they struggled against the Europeans' colonial rule. When they were looking for their own independence, that is in 20th century, the freedom fighters, they called these communities for the same inter-ethnic unity. And therefore, these inter-ethnic unities, they merged together, they came together, and they struggled for their own independence against the colonizers, the Europeans' colonial rule. This one has come to the end of our lesson today, and I want to leave you with some assignment, a simple assignment that we will try, so that in the next lesson we shall pick from there. So you define the following terms. Define the term resistance. 2, you define the term collaboration. 3, you state 3 causes. Question number 2, you state 3 causes of Maji Maji rebellion. State 3 causes of Maji Maji rebellion. So thank you. These are the questions that you can try, so that in the next lesson we shall pick from there. So for this, if you have any question, you can always contact us through our SMS number on the screen. That is the number 4007. That is the number 40007. On our Facebook page is Elimu TV. And our Twitter handle is at Elimu_KE. So I'm glad that you are watching Elimu TV. This is your TV station where you watch and learn. And stay tuned till we meet in the next lesson. I have been your teacher, Mr. John Gatuma. Thank you.